Well, hello, folks, and welcome to the Dieter Melhorn Fishing Podcast. Hope you're having a good day, whatever day it is that you happen to be listening to the show. Today, I've got one of the guests that I recorded at the Catfish Conference in 2025, and that's Captain Trey Thorp from Fishing with Fat Guide Service. I'll put you a link down in the description on where you can get a hold of him. He's a charter captain on the James River in eastern Virginia, home to some very, very large blue catfish. And this one is pretty much all about what's going on down there with the blue catfish and how the state is trying to get rid of them. He has some very strongly held opinions on the topic. I like it, and he's got a lot of information, a lot of the backstory on what's going on down there and what has led to this legislation that is being pushed forth right now and has not totally been resolved, decided on, but it's kind of just it's coming to be here, so you'll have to stay tuned, but it's got some good information. I want to thank the folks at EAFC for sponsoring this video. They make an air pump and a jump box. Believe it or not, this thing right here, this little bitty thing, can actually jump start a car, a truck, namely my son's truck 4 times, a lawnmower, and a lawnmower that was dead over the winter time. So it's amazing how much power. I think we got 4 jumps off of this box. I was shocked. I've had jump boxes before, but they're bigger. But pretty cool little products. Great to have an air pump. Put it in your boat. Put it in your truck that you tow your boat with. You're going to need one sooner or later. So check them out. I'll put a link down in the description. I appreciate them sponsoring this video. But let's jump into it. Captain Trey Thorp, give me some background on yourself. Where are you from, and how did you kind of make the jump into fishing for catfish?
Well, I was born and raised in Central Virginia. Grew up hunting and fishing, freshwater ponds, hunting in the woods and all over Central Virginia. But I kind of migrated more towards fishing. We always were on the bay. We were in the ocean. We were saltwater fishing, striper, flounder, cobia, drum, all the fun stuff, all the big things that used to come up in the bay a lot. But then all of a sudden it just kind of tapered off. Every one of those fisheries just fizzled out, and that's when I discovered I could go 30 minutes from the house, put the boat in the water, and had a chance of catching an 80-pound catfish every single time.
And when you say fizzled out, what do you mean by that? Give me a description of that in numbers or intensity or interest.
So the regulations started shifting. The seasons started shifting dates and ranges to where the ocean-going fish, striper mainly, that would travel up and down the coast were not coming into the bay in the legally allowed season to fish for them and target them. And you can say it's for whatever reason, but generally fish are going to stop going somewhere because there's not a bait source there anymore. And me being me, I've witnessed the Omega Menhaden fleets dropping nets on top of schools of striper, schools of drum, schools of cobia, in the hopes of getting the Menhaden those fish are feeding on too. And the bycatch is no cost to them. They don't care about it. It goes in the net, it goes in the net.
All right, so let's clear that up for the landlubbers. Menhaden, what are they, and why are they netting them?
Menhaden are the main bait source for the Chesapeake Bay. They're a small ocean-going fish, swim in giant schools, and they produce fish oil. That is the main reason they are targeted. Is
so when you get your omega A fish oil, that's where
it comes from. And interestingly enough, Virginia is the only state that they are allowed to fish in. There's been a bill presented to the president that will hopefully get them out of the United States waters altogether. That's going to be bad for one little town in Virginia, but good for an entire ecosystem, the entire Chesapeake Bay, and all of its tributaries.
Yep. So before we get back over to the catfish thing, because some of this is going to play into some of the stuff I'm going to ask you about in a little bit, how much as development, industry, expansion of people, there's a lot. I've always said most of our outdoor problems are from TMP, 3 letters, too many people. It's just more and more. How much has that played a part? Is there any research into that having an impact on any of these saltwater fish too?
I mean, there's currently it's a 1 fish per person limit for striper, like inside the slot limit. So you can't catch big ones, you can't catch the tiny small ones, which is fine. Nobody wants to. But basically, you cannot catch enough to make a meal. So it's what's the value in spending all this money on fuel and time and energy to get out there, get baits, get everything squared away to catch 1 fish?
It's basically turned truly into a sport fishery. It's the only reason for being.
It would be the entire. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I am true a sport fisherman when it comes to catfish. I don't even keep the small ones for the table, and that's I mainly just don't want to clean them. But
none of us do once we get to the house.
Yeah, you spend all that day. Man, I get you. My wife yells at me all the time for that. She's like, "You do all this fishing and you never bring home any fish." And
I've started so many trips. I've done in my videos. I'll throw them in the live well, and then I get to the end of the day, and it's like, I don't want to clean these things.
And y'all are all still alive. Get on out of here. Y'all enjoy your trip. Enjoy your boat ride. But getting back to it, there was a noticeable decline in the fishery. The bluefish, when I was growing up, we were catching giant blues. They weren't the tailors and everything, and then it kind of dwindled. And then the cobias noticeably thinned out, and they've kind of made a comeback the last few years. But everybody wants to say, I think everything with regulation, there is a need for some. But once you over-regulate too many things, like nature will balance itself out.
Nature always finds a balance.
Stop being humans with it. Get out of the equation. Just let nature do its thing, and it will balance. The big thing with the catfish is they're not native. They were introduced.
And give people the backstory on that. A lot of people, I tell this to them, they're like, oh, they're not even where I'm at, over toward Charlotte, North Carolina, they're not native anywhere really east of the Appalachian Mountains. How did they come about and end up all the way down at the ocean?
So in the 70s, Virginia had discovered the James River, and most of their tidal fisheries were depleted, overharvested. Almost every native species was struggling to thrive or do anything, basically. So they took it upon themselves to find a fish that would produce a commercial and a recreational fishery for the area and for the river. But essentially the reason these native species were struggling was overharvest, humans interacting, pollution. The James River itself is home of many wonderful chemical spills over the years of history.
That's what I was alluding to earlier, all this industry along that basin there.
Let's see, there was the Keepone spill from, it's changed its names. Allied Chemical was the original name, I believe. But Keepone was released and spilled into the river, and that has settled into the mud and essentially will never go away. The tides come and go, it's settled in the mud, and it's there. Now, where does that actually affect the river this many years later after it's settled? The shad, our favorite bait fish, forage in the mud. They dig through, they filter the mud, they eat whatever particles they can pull out of the mud, but all of that goes into them. That is the Keepone, that is the PCBs, that is the mercury, that is all of the contamination that the Virginia Department of Health says, well, you probably shouldn't eat many fish out of this river, or any. So once these fish, their entire diet is this mud and this stuff filled with these chemicals, well, the bigger catfish that we all like, once they hit a certain size limit, that's their whole diet, is these shad that are slam full of these mercury and PCBs and chemicals. So the food chain will tell you, don't eat these fish. But Virginia is trying to balance and bring back balance to the ecosystem of the river. And it needs help, but the way they're going about it is not the correct way. The majority of the biomass is smaller, undersized fish, which technically are still good for the table because they have not changed to an all-shad diet. They're not consistently consuming these fish full of these chemicals yet. Once they reach 15, 20 pounds, they're fish eaters. That's all they're pursuing. That's all they want. And that's when they start packing in the chemicals and becoming a little not healthy to eat. Going through that whole process, yes, the smaller fish we should harvest in bunches, commercially fish them, and help balance out the ecosystem. But targeting any of the fish over 32 inches is it's not gonna provide the result they're looking for. It's gonna take the trophy fishery that me as a tournament director realizes people from all over the country go to fish the James River because of the fishery of the quality of fish it can produce, and the whole entire experience. You're slam full of history. You have all kinds of things from the Revolutionary and Civil War. You can get lost out there. Whatever your fancy is, you can find it on that river. And the catfish are a huge part of that, and it's really going to be detrimental to a lot of the industry. A lot of the little towns and hotels and gas stations and places that we frequent and spend lots of money at because we're here to catch this fish.
Yeah. Basically, it's a battle between which is crazy to say, but the catfish anglers being the sport fishermen. Because in this situation, they truly are. Most of the time, they're branded as the guys that are out harvesting, killing, taking fish, selling them to pay lakes, whatever, trot lining them for, wherever they're doing with them. In this situation, it's really more of a true sport fishing situation because you're fishing for trophy fish against your opponent being commercial fishing, which I don't get a lot of people that are commercial fishermen that watch my channel. Luke McFadden, I think, tuned in a couple of times to see some stuff.
But Luke's also experiencing the same situation. He's in Maryland, right?
Yeah,
so he's
up
dealing with
the drainage. But it's kind of a battle between those two. And obviously there's more money in the commercial fishing with the lobbies and there's more money probably dealing with it. But how do you fight that battle and try to reach? Because here's the deal. Like you said, you're never going to eradicate blue catfish. Not going to happen. I think even the biologists have conceded that.
I think so.
How do you find a compromise that's equitable for everybody in something like that?
Well, we as recreational anglers kind of thought we had found it with the 32-inch limit, and they've been electroshocking the snot out of that river for the last 2-3 years, and it really has put an impact on our fishing. And because once they're like, well, we shock the fish Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday type deal, and well, the issue is even if you shock those fish on that day, they don't eat come Saturday and Sunday when all of us regular Joes are out there trying to catch it. So it's really there's still fish there.
I'm gonna raise you up just a little. We get the big man beard rub. There we go. All right.
They're still there, but it's become so much harder to catch them, and they're not all still there because not all of these shock boats have the same ethics that they should have, and they know that there's not a game warden sitting at every single boat dock that cares about these fish. It's a very layered argument that we've got because they were introduced by Virginia Department of Wildlife, so DWR. But then we've got the VMRC, the Virginia Marine Resource Commission, who controls the saltwater side. But we've also got multiple commercial industries against us as the recreational anglers because it's not just the commercial catfish industry that they are trying to build and introduce in Virginia with legislation and bills and funds and grants that have already been given and already been squandered. But that's a whole different story. I mean,
We'll talk about that for a second. Tell people a little bit about this whole appropriation of money to try to create a catfish commercial industry because that was one of the things I had seen in some videos that actually getting people to embrace these fish, the eater size fish, was hard to do.
Well, and they were trying to make it easier for the commercial guys to get to a facility that could do the rest of the processing on the fish, clean them, freeze them, ready them for market. And there was not a financially feasible way for a commercial guy to haul a boat full of fish to Maryland or whichever distance he had to go to get these fish to market. So they've granted money. I believe just Hayes, Virginia, Reedville area is getting a fish plant that's going to have the capability of flash freezing these fish and prepping them for market. Generally speaking, when they started passing the shock boat laws and they started really trying to target the smaller fish according to the folks at all, like, because we've been going to meetings for years. We've been going to DWR meetings, VMRC meetings, us as anglers, and the people that are interested in this, and it's, oh, well, we're just doing this for now, and it's, it's a slippery slope. It's always something, and it would just, we've become very disheartened. We don't believe a thing they say, because sorry, I'm trying not to get worked up, but
we see the same thing politically about anywhere you go with some of our marine commissions and stuff like that. I know that's the thing that you will learn. Anybody that gets involved in any level of politics, even at a low level, your county commissioners, whatever, you'll very quickly figure out just how politicians work, and what they say isn't always what ends up getting done in the end.
Yeah, and it's so essentially we've got the Menhaden fleet, which is owned by a Canadian. I think it's owned by Cook Fish. I don't know the whole name. Believe me, I've researched until I'm blind, and then I kind of taper into rabbit holes, and then it just all kind of gets blurry. But it's a Canadian-owned company that works out of Reedville, Virginia. They have boats that they send out into the bay to harvest the Menhaden. Huge operation. We're talking multi-million-dollar, and I'm probably underselling the amount of money that really is involved in this operation. Then you've got the striped bass population and the striped bass anglers and their fishery and the commercial side of that, because everybody likes striped bass. Everybody wants to eat striped bass. Well, then you've also got the old Chesapeake Bay favorite, the Chesapeake Bay blue crab, which, interestingly enough, per all scientific data and studies that have been released, are on the upcline and have had the best populations you've seen lately.
Interesting. I haven't seen that. That's interesting.
There are a few that have been released in the last few years that have been stating that. The interesting thing I see when I'm purchasing a bushel of crabs, 4th of July or whatever time we're out celebrating and picking crabs, is how many undersized females covered in eggs that are in those bushels. It's like you're going to preach and say that your fishery is struggling and in trouble, but this is what you sell and bring back to the dock.
Because there is, for people who don't know, there is a size minimum on these fish. And is there something, because I have watched some of Luke's stuff, and there's some of the fish he releases, or not fish, but crabs he decides to release because of the female and stuff like that. I know there's some complicated science to that. Now, was it the Chesapeake Bay or was it North Carolina where they did the stomach sampling? That may have been North Carolina where they were thinking it was impacting the blue crab, and they were stomach sampling the flatheads and didn't really see that many blue crabs in them. Have they done stuff similar?
They've definitely done studies up here on all of the tidal rivers, and they've sampled different size fish, and blue crab is definitely on the menu.
Sure.
But once the fish get bigger, it's more of an opportunistic meal. It's not any way, shape, or form their main diet.
They're not targeting them.
Correct. Yeah. But what people really don't understand is the blue cat's salinity tolerance and the blue crab's freshwater tolerance. That is a big overlapping window.
So let's explain that to people, what the heck that means, because we're dealing with something a lot of people, middle part of the country, aren't going to know what the heck you're talking about. You've got salinity, salt, and you've got freshwater, which are where catfish are. How does that whole world intermingle down there?
So the the catfish can tolerate salt water, but they don't thrive in it. They're not comfortable in it. They're trying. There is a line of salinity. I haven't narrowed it down yet, but I have a refractometer?
Yeah.
And I'm taking water samples when I have a particularly good session in a spot, and I've landed 4 or 5 big fish. I take a water reading and I write that down. I will narrow this window down, but I think the bigger fish kind of follow a certain salinity level up and down the river as it fluctuates with the tides or with the currents or with the extra water coming down or whatever the conditions are. I'm narrowing it down, and 20 years, I don't care. I'll put it in the time. I'll find it out. But those fish do not like salty water, and science has proven the mouth of the James River being so close to the mouth of the bay and so close to the ocean, the salinity is too high for the fish to really thrive past Hog Island, College Point area, which is the saltwater line of Virginia, or of the Chesapeake Bay. But anyone knows anything about history and rivers and why buildings and cities are built where they're built understands that the first fall line of the river is actually where the real salt water will not pass or should not pass. And that's because you have true fresh water coming down far enough to where it overruns the salt water and it will not creep up over the rapids or levels of the river. Well, that's Richmond. So Richmond, Virginia is the true fall line of the Chesapeake Bay, of the James River. So that's where you're not going to have fresh water above Richmond. But I know I could fill up a bucket of blue crabs sitting under the 95 bridge in the middle of the summertime.
Really? Right there where you're looking at the skyline of Richmond?
Looking at Richmond.
Wow.
And it depends on the conditions. And if, say we got, a storm blowing in off the coast and just everything's really salty, they move on up. And they're not as intolerant to fresh water as catfish are to salt water.
Oh, interesting.
So it's notes that we've taken 20 years fishing on the river when we shouldn't be there anyways.
Yeah.
We've put in more time when it's night in the winter and cold and I just don't want to go home. I want to catch these fish. I want to figure out what's going on. Curiosity drives all. But that whole passion has led us to the passion of trying to defend the fish, trying to keep them in the river and keep them so my kid can catch more. She's 6 years old and she's caught a 40-pound fish and she wants to catch bigger fish, I can assure you.
Yeah, the legislation that I put a podcast up about it that came up for, I guess, discussion stuff going on. There is good news. The way it originally started, if I remember correctly, it included cur. And because I remember talking to somebody about it, I was like, those don't even empty into Virginia waters. They empty back into. They did get rid of those. They removed that from the bill, correct?
Verbally.
And
then they pushed it through the House, and then the Senate took it over, and the Senate passed it with all of this stuff added back in.
Oh, they put it back?
They put it back in because they verbally gave us a line on the James, which if we had to compromise, that was a compromise that we were willing to accept. We weren't going to be thrilled with it, but in reality, the facility that they're building is off of it's more off of the Rappahannock, so it would be more strategic for anglers from the Rappahannock and the Potomac to bring fish to. Mm-hmm. The James is our home river. The James is the river everyone in the country knows. The James is the one that we attempted to focus on if we had to settle. We were going to hone in and settle on, regulations for the James. It appeared we had come to an agreement. We had kind of talked back and forth, behind the scenes, and we had over, I think it was 160 comments on their page, their website, where you can go on and leave public comment. And none of those were even acknowledged.
Really?
They completely
I think
ignored.
they buried that down at the list.
They did not make it easy.
Dig, and I actually text some people like, "Where's it at on here?" And you have to physically scroll down to get to the bottom of where they had it at.
It is definitely not. They made it difficult for us, and every one of these meetings were at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon on a snow day, or it's just they made it hard for the working folks to show up to try to help our fish that we really do love and have.
Do you have anybody on your side in government, any elected officials that are at least open-eared to it? And, I mean, obviously, politicians go to where the money's at. We all know that.
Well, and half of these politicians pushing these bills have all received payments to their campaign from Omega Protein Company.
Yeah, which is a multi-million-dollar company.
And it's really, the sad part is what they sold their soul for. I mean, $3,500 from Omega, and you're like, yeah, I'll push this bill to destroy the entire industry.
Which is really very true. It's amazing how little you have to contribute to a politician. I've seen some of these numbers from people, and it's really like, in the scope of millionaires, it's really just little bits of money.
It is. And, I mean, I do not have money by any means, but $3,500 seems a little light.
Yeah, you could, especially to get some leverage like that. So let me ask you this: all this stuff goes through, they start harvesting fish, maybe they have an impact. Do you think, because many biologists have said that removing smaller fish from a well-established healthy fishery will lead to bigger fish? Could that end up happening in the end on this if they start harvesting some of these? Because they're another mouth to feed. And I've always used the equation, if we come walking in the room and me and you got a couple large pizzas, we're going to get fat if it's just me and you eating them. But if all the people over at Catch the Fever VRBO this weekend come in, we're only going to get a slice, and we're going to lose weight this weekend. The same thing could happen. Has anybody thought about that? Do you think that could happen?
And that's the science that we've been working with and that we believe. Selective harvest and harvesting of the small fish needs to happen. But the big build, the issue that we've been struggling with is they removed the 32-inch limit. So the law was you were allowed to possess one fish over 32 inches per person per day. That's a lot of fish when you really add up to it, because what's happening is you got the shock boat, which has 2 or 3 people on it. They say the shock boat doesn't bother these bigger fish, which it does. If it doesn't float them to the surface, it definitely shuts them down for a couple of days to where they don't eat. But you've got the shock boat, which has 2 or 3 guys on it, 1 or 2 guys on it. Then you've got a chase boat that's running around with a dip net that's got 1 or 2 guys on it. Well, you're already at 4 fish that day over 32 inches that they could take out, which are big fish. But they know, and I know, and everybody else knows, there's not a game warden sitting at every single ramp waiting on them, and they really don't care. They really don't. So they're not enforcing it. So really, no matter what law gets put into place, you don't have the manpower to enforce it. So that's probably why that saltwater line agreement went away, because there's no way they could guarantee those fish came from anywhere, any section of that river. But yes, the smaller fish need to be harvested and need to be thinned. But taking away the big fish at this point is only going to leave you with an overpopulated small population, because the big fish eat the small fish too. Like, big catfish are basically the prime predators in the river at this point. The only other fish that's bigger than them is the sturgeon, the Atlantic sturgeon, that come in and out, and they've made a huge comeback. Their population is booming. I'm watching them net. It's kind of cool because you get to see them net the little baby sturgeons that are, a few months old and stuff, and then they're showing.
So is this like an estuary, or are they coming in there to?
They're coming in to spawn.
Oh wow!
Yep, they come, and I mean, it is a show, because you'll be sitting out there and you'll have 6-8 foot sturgeon full breaching. Whether it's daytime or nighttime, it's real scary at the night when you see them come up like feet from your boat.
Have you figured out a way to fish for these things yet?
That is not legal.
You can't even catch and release on them.
If you catch them and hook them, you are supposed to release them in the water. Remove the hook if you can and release them in the water. You're not supposed to remove them from the water. And I've got all of the bad luck. So I do not play.
Because I've seen the guys on the West Coast fishing for them out there and target them, and same thing. It's all catch and release, but that's a massive fish.
I've got a couple guys. Pat Simiotti, he's from Oregon. He's from the Dalles, Oregon. He sits in his house and he looks down on the Columbia River, and he goes out with his Hellcats all the time, and he catches the snot out of these big sturgeon. And him and his brother actually flew in to fish with me for a few days on the James. We caught them both a bunch of big fish and good fish, and had a great time. And then I ended up out in Oregon for work randomly, and I was in Salem working on the Capitol, and that's about 2 hours away from his house. And he was like, "You got to come fishing with me." So I cut out of work early one day. I was like, shoot, I'm in Oregon. I am never going to be back here on purpose. So cut on across the country, and man, saw some beautiful land, and got to hook into a couple of white sturgeon there, I think is
How many can you catch in a day doing that out there? Now we're off on a tangent, but I'll ask it real quick.
Hey, if you can catch more than one tuna in a day, you can catch more than one of them sturgeon in a day.
Wow.
I was beat after I had a 6-footer. He was like, "Oh, that's a baby."
Yeah, because when he maybe the same guy that does the live feeds when he catches these things, and
Every
they're
so
on there.
often, probably.
They're on there for air. It's like I'll go watch something else and come back, and they'll still be winching on one of those things.
Yeah.
So back to your guide business. Let's touch on that for a minute. When's the good time? I mean, I get the same question. When's the best time to come? When are the good times? Because I know there's multiple ones. Let's pick your top three. 3 times I'm coming out there. I'm got a couple of days to come. Give me your top 3 months, times of the year. When should I plan it?
October, November, or February.
October, November, February.
So you're going to have, honestly, come April, you're going to have a lot of cool stuff happen in the river too. A lot of bait's going to show up. The river's going to come back to life, essentially. But the primary target's blue catfish, and they don't mind cold.
Mm-hmm.
The colder the better. If you can, we've had a few of these weeks here lately where it gets so cold that everything freezes up except for the flowing water, and there's only 1 or 2 boat ramps you can use. Well, that tends to isolate the fish and get them to kind of congregate a little closer. It's more like fish in a barrel.
Yeah.
So let me take those cold months. It makes me look like a ace. You know what I mean?
Now, how's the spring fishing? Because for us, like April into May, we get fish that start to either A, go looking for shallow areas to spawn, or they're chasing fish like crappie, bass, shad that are going shallow and our shallow water. Do y'all have anything like that? I know that's a totally different fishery than where I'm at on a reservoir.
Well, we've got the shad run every spring. So the American, the hickory, and no, it's just the American and the hickories. Plus, you'll have herring, you'll have white perch kind of start showing back up. Like the river comes to life. So everything's kind of coming in the river to spawn out. Some of the fish are going to follow, some of the big catfish are going to follow upriver, but the James is also, like, I've always kind of treated it as 2 different types of fisheries. Like from Appomattox, Hopewell up, I treat primarily as a freshwater fishery. These fish kind of stay isolated to the areas they like. They don't really roam as much. Right. And then downriver from that, it is more like a saltwater fishery to where those fish are kind of swimming in packs or schools and I feel they're kind of meandering around like size fish. I can't tell you how many times we've had 3-4 rods fold up at the same time, and they're all 30 to 50 pound fish. They're all real similar in size, and it's like, it's not a coincidence, but that happens more downriver than upriver.
Yeah.
So
what style of fishing are you doing? And we got all different types of fishing in the catfish world. Trolling, anchoring, bottom bouncing. Are you park and prey? What's kind of the combo there for what you do?
Park and prey sounds best. That's always the case. No, we're usually on anchor, but we'll scan an area, a ledge, a region, and then kind of strategically anchor on specific structures and get baits to where we either saw the fish on our graph, or we know they kind of should be there, or they're going to show up. So it's in the wintertime, I'm more focused on structure and a specific thing. In the summertime, I'm looking for a big open area, and I'm going to sit and wait. Wintertime, I'm more run and gun, but still a lot slower than most, just because I like to give it at least an hour and 15, because even
okay, that is interesting. I always ask people, what do you consider a long set or a quick set?
Well, and that time of year varies everything. In the summertime, if I'm going out and I know I'm gonna fish 12 hours, I'm probably only fishing 2 spots. I'm gonna soak and let the baits get the scent out to the traveling fish that are roaming around looking to eat, and then maybe when the tide turns, I might move, or I might just turn on the anchor, or I'm usually using spot lock until the batteries die halfway through the night and gives you the fun tangle of everything, and then it's just like, technology. You love it and hate it at the same time, right? But yeah, usually in the wintertime, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, if they're not, the ones you marked haven't hit the deck, they're probably not eating. Summertime, though, 3-4 hours, 4 hours. I don't care. I will sit there all night. If I know I mark good fish roaming this flat, they're going to be here all night until the sun comes up and changes things, or storm rolls through, or any.
Now, how much structure is there in these rivers? Because I know when I get toward the coast fishing, I do some saltwater stuff at Winyah Bay, and a lot of times those saltwater places that it's like it's kind of just it's nothing really soupy. Are you nothing sharply defined? Are you looking for very little subtle things, like somebody dumped a old freezer out there and it's got silt piled up? And
I mean, if you're in a big giant flat that looks like a desert, anything that breaks up that would be structure. But we're kind of lucky on the James, because you got to think of how many ships sailed up that river without a depth finder or GPS. During the Civil War, there's a section of the river called 3 Mile Reach, and at the very bottom, the river is the most narrow part of it. There used to be a blockade set across that river during the Civil War. The Union Army held the hill, and any supplies going to the Confederate capital of Richmond that came around Sturgeon Point and started coming around was getting pummeled by cannon fire. So there's definitely no wrecks on that stretch to fish ever. Definitely no. Nobody should waste time in that section of the river. There's no structure. It's a barren desert. But we have stuff like that all
Yeah.
through that river, from colonial schooners and different types of old barges that were sunk because they were the old wooden barges and they converted to the metal and they sunk those around Dutch Gap area.
That's cool.
There's
That's
so
cool.
there's
This stuff has got to look cool on the side scan looking at
oh,
it.
it's so awesome. And then you'll see that one giant fish sitting next to it and you won't move for the next 4 hours because
Yeah.
you're like, I'm going to get him too. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'll spend hours just scanning structure and seeing cool stuff. But eventually my patience wears thin and I'm like, all right, we got to get some baits in the water and
Yeah.
start hitting them. But
Well, we'll touch on one last thing. Forward-facing sonar. Have you messed with it? Do you use it? And do you see it playing a part either in your business, your fishing, or tournament fishing anytime soon?
I'm extremely interested in it. I've never been the first gen guy. Let me get that second or third one where the kinks have kind of been worked out a little bit. But
Pioneers take the arrows, settlers take the land.
yeah, let me have that land. But if they it looks awesome. And I mean, I've watched way too many YouTube videos and stuff where these guys are just jigging their baits right in front of these fish, and they're like, "I got him." And as far as bait catching and stuff like that, and just if you can save me time in the freezing cold morning where I don't have to be out there, or Rick doesn't have to be out there throwing a cast net 100 times, yeah, we're in. Sold. How can I do it? Sign me up. I'll buy 2. But with them talking about I don't pay attention to bass fishing much, but it's the only thing that's ever talked about. If you have a fishing feed, it's either the stuff you physically follow and make your feed, or it's the occasional, oh, you like fishing, here's bass.
Yeah. Or the girl in a bikini holding a fish just for some abstract reason that flies through the feed. I don't know where those come from, but I think as soon as they see
yours are abstract.
Yeah, hey, well,
mine is loaded.
It
It's
is.
crazy.
It's just. I guess they see you stop on a fish picture, and then after that, AI picks up. There's a fish in this picture, and
I'm 100% trying to identify the species of fish
Yeah.
every single time. Every single time. I can't believe I even delay on some of this. It's like clearly a big eye tuna.
Yeah.
But it's been. I like it. I have not physically played with it. I want to get in on that. And honestly, I think I saw one of the vendors here was going to have some of those units here today, and I've already spent way too much money, and I only stopped at one booth. But
My new sonar stuff, you can put the transducer on for it. I haven't done it. I'm not saying I'm not going to. I probably will at some point because I like you. I think for bait fishing it would be amazing, especially throwing a cast net. If you can get the thing, put the transducer on the front of the boat to where you can see where stuff's at, I think that's a game changer for bait. Last question on that point. Do you think we should, because it's already, it's the worms are out of the can in the bass fishing world.
Mm-hmm.
They've got, way too much money from the sponsors, Garmin, everybody else to unring that bell. Do you think catfishing would be smart to preemptively say, we're not going to use forward-facing sonar? A big tournament series. A big tournament director. Should you come out and say, we're just not going to allow it?
It's very.
That's the toughest question I've asked you all day.
It's really not the conservative or libertarian mindset, though, is to regulate somebody's ability to do whatever they can afford. I mean, I've always been a fan.
That's where I start, because I have a very libertarian view on, let people do what people do as long as they don't infringe on anybody else.
Right. And I mean, a run what you brung situation, I can tell you I've got a 15-inch Solix that I will stay glued to for a while, and I've been, for the past 20 years, getting smoked by a dude in a John boat that just knows his stuff. So,
Yeah.
I mean, and I do not mean that with any disrespect, Kenny. I promise. I'm sorry.
Called him out by name.
Well, he knows he's
He
the
knows
man.
he's good.
He knows he's the man, and we've been chasing him for years. But there's certain levels of anglers that I'm trying to be better than, or not. If I feel like if I can keep up and compete with them, then I am doing okay as an angler myself. And I'm not trying to pull anybody else down or push anybody else up. That's my bar, and I'm if I can compete with this guy, I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
And he's the man. He just won Kings of the James this
Yeah.
past year, so
He's doing it very basic, so you're saying that, it may or may not help. My concern is this. I think, and I think some people are already doing it, and I don't think you're going to hear about it for a while, but I think at some point it's going to shift. The age class of winners I think it's going to do the same thing. that it's done in the bass world and the crappie fishing world is to where the younger generation is going to, one, intuitively, they adapt to it better.
Yeah.
Second thing is physically, they're going to adapt to it better because, sadly, there is some physicality. It's almost, I know you're not out, working out and lifting weights, but there is a physicality of standing there and having to work something continuously. And I think youth is going to have some advantage, and I think some of the older dudes are going to get pissed off about it, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, and a lot of the older generation doesn't like change, and I'll be honest, I am very set in my ways on a lot of things too.
You're way too young.
No. yes, but no. Like, try to keep an open mind about everything. Yeah. But when you find that thing you like, you can own it. And shoot, I've got 15 pairs of these pants because growing up I saw cartoons where they'd pull open the closet and it was the same outfit every day. I'm like, man, that's mine.
Well, you know who did that? Einstein.
It makes sense.
Einstein had the same suits so that he didn't have to make it. He didn't waste any of his mental faculties and thinking on, I got to pick something out.
Well, I can assure you that was not my line of thinking when I thought of that. I was like, man, that just seems way easier. I just put the same pants on every day and go to work. But it's, I think factory workers, cashiers, people that have to stand in the same place all the time and they're doing the same thing, that it is draining work. It is physical. It is seriously, it is an actual thing. So, older guys that don't want to be out in the cold getting beat up and then standing and having to just be in a central location the whole time, that will wear on them.
I don't think it will work in every fishery. I don't think that's going to be, I don't think it'll be as much of a, I ain't going to say it's a cure-all in bass fishing because it's really not. It's not a cure-all to win tournaments, but I'm going to have some crappie fishing guys, and I use the word crappie and crappie interchangeable so I don't piss everybody off at one time.
Because I just say crappie and send them to the roof.
But, most of those guys will tell you, you're not going to make a lot of money crappie fishing in tournaments if you don't use it now.
That is really the pan fishing and the bait fishing side of the industries and the fishing world seems they're going to benefit.
Because the thing that I see is I see these guys, when I've talked to them off camera, they're like, oh, we don't even stop at docks or brush piles unless there's 2-pound fish on it. So if they can tell the difference between what I normally catch, my little crappie out there, and these 2-pounders, just think what somebody can go. Those are a bunch of unders over there. I'll deal with them later.
Yep. Back.
There's that one there. I can measure him. He's 46 inches long. I need that one in the tank. I think it's to that point with some people. They just haven't mastered the catching part yet.
The side scan and the down scan with my Solix is incredible, and I'm by no means a wizard at it yet. I know I'm going to play with it and tinker with it and eventually figure it out, but I have scanned a fish, side scanned a fish, put a pin on it, said I can't believe it. You can see the shadow, the perfect outline of the fish. You see his fat belly and his tail, and you're like, that's awesome. And then you put a bait 5 feet in front of where it should have been, and it lays over, and you get him into the boat, and you're holding the fish in the picture, and you're like, that's the same fish. Same shape.
And see, that's where it's going to close the distance. You said put the bait where it should have been. With that, you're going to be able to look and go, he's 35 feet right over there, and you're going to be able to watch the bait right in front of him. You're going to be able to see what the fish, you can see if that's a flathead, if he's even interested in that bait.
Yeah, because
if he's not paying any attention. I just think it's there's a part of me that says, as a director, just preemptively do away with it. But then there's a part of me that's like, you can't unring the bell as far as technology goes. So I don't know. I'm torn on it.
And the catfishing world's different too, because it's more of a. It's hard to describe, but it's. We will build it if we think it's too expensive. We will make it our own. We will make it better, and it will be stronger, and it will be us proof. Rick and I are hard on everything we own, but if we found something we like and we feel like it's too expensive, we'll just make our own. We have the ability to do that. We're the blue,
which has been the demise of probably 90% of the tackle companies out there in the catfish world, is whether it be rod holders, rod racks, sinkers, catfish rigs, everything.
Yeah, and that's that. But that is the reality of the blue collar American catfisherman. We will make it our own if it's too expensive or too inconvenient or whatever the case may be. We are a fickle bunch.
Yeah.
We like what we like, and we will stand and die on that hill if that's what is required.
So that brings up another question. I was going to let you go. This is a long podcast, but you're giving me good sound bites for other stuff. The catfish culture, the catfish community culture. One of the things I'm doing in a bigger podcast is talking about the brand of catfishing, just as a brand. It's different than crappie, it's different than bass, it's different than trout.
Way different than trout.
Yeah, definitely. It's a total other end of the spectrum from saltwater stuff.
Oh, yeah.
How would you describe, how would you quantify the catfishing world, the good points and the bad points about it? What is embracing? What is keeping it from being bigger than it is, or growing, or does it need to grow? How would you encompass all that? Describe it to somebody, because a lot of my listeners are not tournament fishermen. They're kind of new to the biz and probably wondering about it. How would you encompass the catfish world?
Well, catfishing is one of those things that has so many ways to do it, which is easily a division thing. But you can catch catfish on a stick and a line, a string, or you can catch them on the newest, baddest fishing rod on the market. There's so many ways in between, and that's the differences that people focus on are what drives the catfishing industry and kind of prevents it from growing more than it should. When in reality, we're all using the same base model stuff. We don't care. If you're using the equipment that was right for your budget and right for you for that day, you're using the right equipment. Now, you might have an argument with yourself later on if that Walmart rod folds in half and snaps and you lose the fish of your dreams, but that is an argument
My
that
hook
you will
wasn't
have.
sharp enough. I shouldn't have had a circle hook. I should have had a J hook.
That is an internal argument
Yeah,
for yourself
yeah.
later. But I think there's a lot of positivity and there's a lot of really good people in the catfishing industry. And shameless plug, I've got a new podcast that we're working on called Slack Tide Podcast, and that's my thing. I'm trying to focus on positive energy, positive vibes only, and just the benefits of taking kids fishing, the benefits of just being a good person and doing whatever we can do to have a good time and make sure everybody out there is safe and enjoying themselves. I think that mindset and that mentality and coaching how to do better instead of belittling on the internet. Responding to anybody's stuff on the internet's hard because you can't read tone and text.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Even if
and
it
I'm
was
the worst because I say stuff sometimes that good
you're-
intention,
yeah.
but it said, my wife will read, she goes, you sound like an asshole when you said it, but I meant this because what you meant and what the written word
Yep.
says, and you're exactly right.
But that's the thing is like I am a direct person myself, so I don't comment on anything on Facebook. I'll try to find a person to person and say, hey man, that was an awesome fish you caught the other day. Congratulations.
I'm going to start sending my stuff to you and just let you handle it. That's a very smart way to do it.
I'm going to ChatGPT. But hey man, great fish, awesome job, congratulations. Next time you catch a fish that big, try to support the belly, try to support the weight. You don't want to hang it from the jaw. Just any type of coachable moment, try to take that and move forward with it. And we have a plethora of amazing examples of genuine good people in this industry. And if we can just shine a light on them and just focus on the good, I don't want to ignore the bad, but we can leave them behind,
Good. Thank you, dude.
Thank you
Enjoyed
for having
it,
me,
man.
Dieter. Yes, sir. I
Perfect.
appreciate it.